So here's the question to ask yourself when you think you are the narcissist. Many survivors of narcissistic relationships believe that they are the narcissistic one. Now, why is that? Well, here are some of the most typical reasons people believe that. First, you were told repeatedly that you are the narcissistic one by the narcissistic person. Second, you were repeatedly gaslighted throughout the relationship and kept hearing that you are selfish, needy, demanding, ungrateful, angry, whatever combination of things that left you feeling like you were the problem. Third, that you would become dysregulated at times yourself in the relationship. You may have escalated during your arguments. You may have reacted to them angrily or found yourself becoming volatile and thought, well, I'm as bad as them. Fourth, you would shut down and stop talking to them and then be told that you were the one giving them the silent treatment and being passive aggressive, and you felt, and you believed, or you were made to believe, that you were doing what they were doing. Fifth, you may have cheated or had an emotional affair or got some comfort with someone outside of the relationship in some way. You likely felt shame, but in some cases, this outside relationship may not have only been a source of solace, but might have been how you were able to get out of the relationship because you got some courage from it, or that you were able to stay in the relationship because this other person was a distraction and a support that gave you just enough bandwidth to be able to put up with the ups and downs. Number 6, you may have found yourself so distracted by the narcissistic relationship that you were not as good as you could have been about staying in touch with friends, or you were too ashamed to stay in touch with friends and other people that you care about. And then you felt like you were being selfish and that you were not there to people who cared about you. Number 7, you found yourself becoming more and more suspicious in the relationship, sometimes believing your narcissistic partner was violating your trust, even at times when they were not. And then you started to wonder if you were as suspicious and accusatory as them. Listen, you can add to this list in the comments if there are other circumstances that came up in your life that led you to think that you are the narcissistic one, but things would happen in the relationship and you would have responses that were often normal responses to the relationship and its dynamics. Attempts to feel safe and protect yourself in the relationship. The normal fallout of the relationship, such as distractibility. The isolation in the relationship that you were often not the cause of, but were now living with the effects of. The piece that most often throws survivors off is the you being dysregulated part. Many survivors have said, yeah, Dr. Ramani, I raised my voice. I raged back at them. I yelled at them. And I found that my fuse was shorter the longer I was in this relationship. And slowly I was even reacting to other people in an icky way. And even sometimes I was a little bit mean. And some survivors will recall that they were being meaner to people who were actually good to them than they were to the narcissistic people. And of course, when that would happen, then the survivor would feel a tremendous sense of shame. So I get why up to this point, you might have had times, or many times, that you thought you're the narcissistic one. You were having similar responses and even behaviors to the narcissistic person. Now keep in mind that you were also self-reflecting on those responses, which isn't as consistent with narcissism, but that's a more subtle point. But you, at times, said, I'm behaving in ways that feel like ways that they behave. You feel, like I said, dysregulated and reactive. You feel the shame. Of course, you think you're being narcissistic or that you actually are narcissistic. I understand all of that. And this is a dangerous inflection point for survivors who may think, well, I'm narcissistic, so maybe I am the problem. So I may as well stay in this relationship because I am as bad as them, or I am from this unhealthy family and I'm unhealthy and I'm just as bad as them. Well, this is where you have to ask yourself an even more important question. Because it's right here at this point when you have been abrupt or unkind or said something mean or did something mean or escalated with someone, especially if that someone was not toxic or narcissistic, and you think you are the problem, because this is the fork in the road. I want you to ask yourself, how did you respond after you did that bad or dysregulated thing? Did you A, double down and deny or not take responsibility or shift blame onto the person you reacted badly towards? Or B, do you attempt to make amends, real amends, take responsibility, apologize, be accountable, and genuinely commit to not doing it again? Because that divide, that A versus B right there, because that is really where the narcissism, not narcissism divide takes place. What happens after you do something that feels narcissistic behavior adjacent to you? Do you attempt to repair, or do you continue to react from an angry place? Remember, for narcissistic people, when their shame is evoked, they will react with rage, passive-aggressive or overtly aggressive rage. And then they may feel more shame or be shamed for that show of rage. And because they feel new shame, have more rage and will project that shame onto other people through blame. People who are not narcissistic but may have their own trauma histories, their history of narcissistic abuse, or both of those things, it's not unusual to struggle with emotional dysregulation after those experiences, and that can leave you feeling narcissistic. So the pivot point becomes whether or not you see how you affected another person or other people, take accountability, and try to make it right. Because that repair process does not happen with the narcissistic person, or if it seems like it is happening, it is not happening in any kind of authentic or genuine way. Sometimes narcissistic people will sort of posture at apologizing. I'm sorry you feel that way. I'm sorry you're so upset. I'm sorry you were such a sensitive person and I wasn't more careful with you. Just because the word sorry is in a sentence doesn't mean that it is an apology. These BS apologies can actually be more punitive. Sometimes narcissistic people will seem like they are trying to extend an olive branch. And if you do not accept it silently with no questions asked, then they will turn around and tell you that you're the sensitive one who wants to punish them forever because you're not taking their damned olive branch. Typically, the narcissistic person doesn't want the inconvenience of someone being mad at them, especially someone they're close to, or ending the relationship, or whatever the consequence may be. So they may performatively do a pseudo-apology dance, but the other person feels worse afterwards. Nothing is repaired. And if anything, the person on the receiving side of the performative repair and apology may feel guilty for not taking the apology or for feeling like the apology felt hollow, and will then wonder if they are the problem rather than recognizing that the apology and repair were not really a genuine attempt to fix it. And let me tell you the one thing that is not going to happen in the long term. The narcissistic folks are either not going to try to change their behavior, or whatever short-term attempts they make are not going to be sustained. And narcissistic people also often give apologies that are more of an explanation of why they did what they did. And that's not an apology. It's an explanation, or it's an excuse. Finally, it is typical that the narcissistic person will approach the apology from an intention perspective. I didn't intend to hurt you. Well, you did, fool. And it is as though they want a free pass because that was not their intent. And in fact, you reacting to what they did when they didn't intend to hurt you, so they say, can sort of extend into, so, well, this is a you thing if you're hurt because I told you I didn't intend to. And their intention becomes their reality, becomes the only reality instead of your subjective experience of being hurt. So if your apologies and attempts to repair are actually you taking responsibility and changing behavior, then pay attention to that. You may have had a moment. You may have received that moment as the time when you need to work on regulation, seek out therapy, make changes in your behavior, and above all else, you own it. You don't make it about the other person. You don't attempt to explain your intentions or lack of intentions or make it about your backstory. You just give a lean and clean apology. You hold the non-defensive space for the other person to share their experience, and you remain aware so you don't repeat it. And by the way, this is not always easy. If you are making consistent attempts to repair, to be accountable, and to not repeat that behavior, this is a process that can leave another person feeling whole when we do make mistakes or hurt someone, then that may be the most clear piece of evidence that you are not narcissistic. Narcissism quite often can have its origins in trauma and adversity, and as a result, there can be commonalities in how folks with these personality styles react and how people who have had relational traumas and other traumas react. However, understanding that the response to the ruptures is where we can see the differences emerge can help you lift this sense that you are the narcissist, when clearly you are not. Hope that helps, and thanks again.